Hey everybody, welcome to day 3 of Build and the SQL Unplugged show, kicking off day 3 here at Build. This is for you, so feel free to ask questions. Rohan, welcome to the show.
Hey, good morning, Scott.
I'm sure it's been a busy 2 days for you. We were talking earlier, and you're like just slammed with meetings and things like that.
Exactly, sort of meeting customers. You know, there's just tons of energy around data. It's been fantastic, actually. Yeah.
So let's actually talk about that, but let's back up just a second because a lot of great announcements from Scott during the keynote of day 1, and we'll talk about those great data announcements. What I want to key off on is some of the things that Satya mentioned, because he said we're moving from a cloud-first, mobile-first world, making this paradigm shift into a world of intelligent cloud, intelligent edge. And the thing that struck me the most, as he said that data is probably the most important part of this paradigm shift, right?
Right.
And as we think about the follow-up that Scott made of the data announcements, right? How do we then think about the what's happening in the relational world, given all the announcements he made?
Yeah, specifically, I mean, that's a great point. And this is something that we've spoken about previously as well, where there is a huge change that's happening even in the field of where is the value in relational databases, right? I mean, there's a point in time where there was enterprises essentially trusted us. They believed a lot. I mean, a lot of the spend was around data management, so high availability, disaster recovery, backup restore, security and things like that. All those remain very critical, but the cloud has made a lot of those commoditized.
Yep.
Right? And this is where, to what Satya was saying, the intelligence becomes very critical, because that's where we see, moving forward, is businesses are looking into transforming themselves.
Yep.
They'll expect that from their relational databases.
Right.
And this is why, over the past 2-3 years, with SQL Server, 2016, we launched the deep integration of R right inside the database. And the way we did that was we built this extensibility architecture, which essentially it wasn't just for R, even though that was the first language we got in. We released Python, with SQL Server 2017. And why Python? Because Python has native bindings with all deep learning libraries. So when you think about CNTK from Microsoft, TensorFlow from, et cetera, Facebook has come out with their own. So the idea is, how do you sort of build these very rich, deep learning-based applications, and most of these libraries, by the way, leverage the GPUs quite a bit, right, from processing standpoint. Yeah. And so that's clearly the direction we're going. And anything since Azure SQL Database and Azure SQL Data Warehouse share the same core engine. All the features that we add essentially are available. So, later in fall, we're going to make this extensibility capability of intelligence inside the applications available in Azure SQL Database, and subsequently, we're going to get that in Azure SQL Data Warehouse. So, very excited about that.
Yeah, and that's awesome stuff. Is the clear message that, look, we're not getting rid of relational, because we see, look, 2016 was awesome. Now with 2017, it's just that we're complementing that with this notion of, we want you to be able to easily do the gain those insights into your non-relational or relational data, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's relational databases will remain the cornerstone for lots and lots of applications, new applications getting built for a very long time. In fact, it's interesting, if you take a look at one of the key announcements we made at Build in Scott's keynote, was this data migration service. Right, database migration service that we're building. Because one of the things we're hearing from our customers very loud and clear, and I think that the announcements we made will resonate very well, is, look, I want to try, we want to move to the cloud, but we have a huge amount of investments that we've made in our existing application infrastructure. And I don't want to we don't want to invest a ton of money changing all of that to move. Right. How do you make sure that, when I want to transform my business, transform my infrastructure, and start leveraging the cloud, that is easy and done in a cost-effective way. So the database migration service, along with, we're announcing a limited preview of the managed instance support in Azure SQL Database, makes that very easy. In fact, in my session yesterday, one of the strongest pieces of feedback we got was, thank you. Yeah. You guys finally are making it super easy for me to move my SQL Server applications. And not that, look, just to be very clear, right, Azure SQL Database, we have case study with MSIT as an example, where 53% of their applications using SQL Server were able to move to SQL Database today. So we highly encourage customers. But there's certain very complicated SQL apps, which rely on instance level capabilities, things like three-part names or VNet support
Right.
or running SQL agent jobs, which just given the database scope application model that we have, those things don't seamlessly transfer. We have ways you could do it, but they don't seamlessly transfer. And so if the goal essentially is, look, I want to use the cloud, but I want my migration costs to be almost negligible, which is the case with a lot of our enterprise customers. Right. I think we've removed that barrier now.
Let's drill down into that a little bit, because the whole managed instance, because the big takeaway, well, let me ask you this first. What was out of all the great data announcements yesterday, what was the one big takeaway that all the attendees should go from a data perspective? That's awesome, and I think you nailed it. The kind of the managed instance stuff, right? But that should be the one key takeaway. This allows me to get to the cloud the fastest,
Correct,
and easiest.
Correct. Oh, absolutely. Like for existing customers who are sort of looking into migrating migrating their applications built on SQL Server, or even other proprietary databases, whether it's Oracle or Sybase, we're going to make that extremely easy for those migrations, or as we call it, like modernization of your infrastructure through database migration service and the availability of the instance model. Of course, we'll get to the other super cool data announcements that we have. But, this is where it gets real for the business, right? I mean, there's lots of new stuff, and obviously, which we'll talk about. But really, when you think about the journey and making it really easy for our existing customers, when we talk about the hybrid story, build your app once, deploy it anywhere, it's becoming real.
Yeah.
And I actually think that's great, because Azure is probably the only cloud service that makes it so easy, and which we should. I mean, it's our birthright, really.
It is.
Given just the strength that we have in the enterprises today. Yeah.
So let's drill down into this managed service, right? Because you and I were talking before that just from your session, it was just like, this is you finally get it, right? What does this open up for? Existing customers plus, new customers that have been waiting, going, if they just would do X, right? What does this open up for them?
It's a great question. I mean, DocuSign is a great example. I think they were in my session yesterday. Eric was there in my session, and I think we showed the video in Scott's keynote as well. It's a perfect example of a customer. Like, they have done a great job in getting, building their application. It's a modern application for performance scale, for the growth of their business, right? And for them, the bet on Azure is really about expanding their global footprint. I mean, it's a very successful company that's growing very fast. They're not looking into rewriting their app. They're very happy. I mean, it's a very highly optimized app, but they're essentially looking for Azure to meet the performance and scale requirements, to meet the compatibility requirements that they have with SQL Server.
Is this the kind of the concept of you're finally coming to us? We don't have the means to come to you, but you're finally coming to us and meeting us to deliver the platform.
Exactly,
right?
Exactly. Because if you place yourself in DocuSign's shoes, right? If you place yourself in that situation, what you realize is, it can't be like, okay, I want to go expand my global footprint, but that comes at a very heavy cost of rewriting my app.
Yeah, don't ask me to rewrite my stuff.
Because the whole point that they're not building their own data centers is because they want their expenditure for global expansion to be low. So you can't trade off like building more data centers with rewriting or rewriting their app.
Right.
And I think this is where the support that we are adding with like the database migration service and managed instance really brings that to bear.
Yeah. Okay. Great questions from the audience. Let's take a couple. John asks, will SQL on Mac OS ever be a possibility?
So you can run SQL on Mac OS today by installing SQL Server and Docker containers.
Yep.
Like SQL Server running natively on Mac without Docker. We're looking into that. It's just that the experience that we've built with SQL Server using Docker is so rich already.
Yeah.
I mean, like internally within the team, we have. I mean, I use it all the time myself. Just to try out the the work we are doing with SQL Server. So I mean, I'd encourage folks to try that out, and if there's any way we can make that experience better,
try it out, provide feedback. Absolutely.
Right. So it's the delta of that versus native. It's not super clear at this point.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right. Will R services or Python be coming to Azure SQL Database?
Absolutely.
We talked about that before we started.
Absolutely. They're coming to Azure SQL Database. We are actively working on that. What I can say is it's sometime around early fall. We are going through our, the final, sort of building the code, testing and certification. Very, very excited about it, right? I think this again goes to the point around intelligence that, Satya and Scott have been talking about. we're going to make that a reality in our cloud services as well.
And it's interesting. I love the fact, and keep your questions coming because these are great questions. But I love the fact that, what we're doing is we're not getting rid of relational. There's such a critical need there, but there's this other need that let's meet to get that, better insights into the non-relational side of things, right?
Correct.
And if we can marry those in a great platform,
then it's great for us.
That's great for us, right?
Absolutely.
Let's talk about, you and I were talking before, let's talk about choice, because, we said, we're, instead of waiting for the people to come to us, let's go and meet them where, with the tools and technology that they're working with, right? And so what are the announcements around that?
So, the big ones from a relational database services standpoint was, of course, the addition of MySQL and Postgres to our family. We welcome them with open arms. We're very, very excited about them. And again, this sort of goes back to, and this is, again, nothing new. Azure, we've been talking about this for several years now, that Azure is about choice. Azure is about meeting our customers where they are. And the developer segment happens to be one of the most important customer segments we have. So it's really about them. Obviously, from a relational database services standpoint, what we're doing with Azure SQL Database and Azure SQL Data Warehouse, we're going to continue doing that. These are flagship premium services. We're going to continue investing in them, just like the R and Python support, graph support, and all the adaptive query processing, and intelligent threat detection. I could go on and on in terms of the value we're adding. But at the same time, we also know that they are our customers, our developers who've already bet on Postgres. Who've bet on MySQL because of the web frameworks they use or the ORMs they use. They're extremely popular. We know that. And this is really about them. This is really about them having the best experience for what they want to do in Azure. We really want to make MySQL and Postgres, if you want to run them as managed services, Azure to be the best option. And like the way we, architecturally the way we've built it is no different from, Azure SQL Database or Azure SQL Data Warehouse. They run on the same fabric, right? That gives you the, the managed service element of it, right? So all the value that we're adding to the fabric eventually is going to show up in MySQL and Postgres. Now, one very critical data point as we went into this was to make sure that the application service compatibility remains exactly the same. So if you've built a MySQL app or you've built a Postgres app, you should just be able to drop that into Azure or change your connection string to point to,
and bam,
and it will just work. That's a very key design point that will never change.
Given all of this, I got a couple questions in mind. Given all of this, what is really the message that we're sending to everybody going, here's all the cool stuff we're doing? What's that one message that we could say, boom, here you go?
The message is, look, Azure is a platform where, as far as the data, your investments in data are concerned, we are going to meet you where you are. If you have existing investments that you've done, where you want to sort of leverage those investments and continue using them, but you want to use the benefits of modernizing your infrastructure.
You want to make it easy to use that.
We're going to make it very, very easy with extremely low cost for you to do. So that's a key message that we want the customers to take away, which is, look, your investments that you've already made over several years are not going to go waste. This is not just about rewriting everything, right? Now, at the same time, if there's opportunities, and ASOS is a great example, and they were in my session yesterday, where they used this opportunity to transform their entire infrastructure, the e-commerce platform, as an opportunity to rewrite their app, right? So basically, they've rewritten their app in a very modern way, with in the microservices architecture, which leverages Azure SQL Database very heavily. And they did that. And DocuSign, like we said, is a different example. So Azure, from a data platform standpoint, enables you to build, go through the journey the way you want it. Really, that's the way to look at it. Like if you're ready to sort of, go big on some, rewriting in the microservice architecture, we have options for that. You want to take it a little bit slow, migrate to Azure, get the benefits of the PaaS architecture, we will make sure that works very well as well. And I think, there was a question that sort of came up around, hey, what is better, SQL or no SQL? Both have their place. And it's interesting. This is sort of discussion that's been going on for 15, 20 years now. There was a point in time where you had basically relational databases and file systems, and there's nothing in between. And look, this sort of always happens. Again, this is not a new phenomenon. Right? Over a period of time, we've seen customized stores come up, and there's always there's a place. Not everything fits into the relational data model, and it shouldn't be like that.
Exactly.
Right? And I think this is basically where I feel that with our relational database offerings in Azure SQL Database, and the amazing new service that we announced with Azure Cosmos DB, which are very complementary.
Yes.
I think we have a great story for any data needs that you have in your platform.
Yeah, I think what the message there we need to get out is it's not one or the other. When we're talking SQL relational and those, it's not one or the other, right? Like you mentioned, these are very complementary,
Absolutely.
right? And you're using relational for this and non-relational for that, right?
Correct. And historically, again, this is not new because every time you go through announcements like these, people are like, hey, which one? And this is what I say, like, none of this is a new conversation, right? Even 10 years ago, I remember having discussions whether, look, I'm trying to really do this. Is it more NoSQL or is it SQL? And those things, like ultimately, these are not black and white answers. You have to really look at what the requirements of your app are. Now, there's certain classic scenarios which are very clear on either side. That we just always going to say, but this is what it is. I mean, and in certain cases, the answer will be nuanced depending on what customers want to do. But what we know is, like I said, both are very important for us. We're sort of going to invest in both, and yeah. And
we'll be answering this question tomorrow and the next day. Right? But, okay. So, SQL Unplugged is all about getting, one of the things about this is getting insight into engineering, right? So as we come out with these announcements, what's the excitement? What's the feel within SQL engineering as we, make announcements like this and your group's working on this stuff?
Oh, the teams are super excited, right? I think there's first thing is as an engineer, when you see the value you're adding, you're meeting customer needs, and then the feedback that you get, there's a lot of excitement around. I mean, it's interesting. Like, I always talk about this. For me personally, I mean, one of the biggest things I've seen is around just this migration service and the compatibility that we're adding with managed instance. It's not like the cool news, but it's where the business hits the road, right? Like, when you really talk about giving very serious options for customers to modernize, be it from SQL Server or Oracle. I mean, like we said, we're going to make it really easy as our customers are looking into transforming their applications on other proprietary databases as well. Now, you're addressing a real customer challenge. And I think that's to me personally, like, when we talk to the team as well, like solving those, and those are hard problems. Right? You can imagine building a database migration service that sort of does things online seamlessly is not easy. But we've learned a ton helping SharePoint Online or Dynamics, who've made a huge bet. Their online services had their own SQL infrastructure that they're trying to move to SQL Azure. They're way ahead in their path as well. And we've learned a ton based on these migrations. And like, how do you make sure that the downtime eventually is less than 5 minutes? And all this stuff has gone into making this a very rich service.
Awesome. I want to drill down in a little bit about the managed service, but let's take another question. When will C# and F# be supported in database as R and Python are currently supported?
Yeah, right. So that's a good question. I mean, from a C# standpoint, we obviously have support for .NET, the CLR right inside the databases. Yes, currently we don't have that enabled in SQL Azure, and we're working to get that. The vision that we have, and this is again going back to what we did with SQL Server 2016, when we launched R, right at that time, the discussion we had around was building the extensibility architecture, which essentially allows us to run, developers to run the language of their choice. That's really our vision, right? To be super clear. We've enabled R with 16, with 17 we are enabling Python. Obviously, when you think about enabling Java or C or C++ or the language of your choice, you just have to look at certain considerations around security, sandboxing, performance and scale, and that sort of stuff. But really, I mean, our vision is to use this extensibility architecture to make it very easy for developers to write custom code and on the data that's already stored inside the database. Some of the crown jewels of a company are always stored inside relational databases, right? And how do you sort of leverage that? Our aim is to sort of get there. I don't have a roadmap right now in terms of what languages, but be rest assured that that's really where we're going with this.
So we're getting a ton of questions flooding in. We're probably not going to get to all of them, so continue to watch in the SQL Unplugged show. Maybe we'll get to them in our next show. But there's another question up there that I really like that actually came up the other day. I've got, there it is. So we have a SQL Server 2012 instance running in Azure VM. It runs 24/7. Is there any advantage of upgrading it, right? So I got this question the other day actually from somebody, out of the marketplace. I spun up a SQL VM with 2012, 2014. Should I upgrade it, right? And how do I upgrade that?
So look, I mean, here's basically the way I look at it. If everything is working great and it's sort of meeting your needs, I wouldn't just upgrade it for the sake of upgrading it. But that said, moving to the managed instance model from a compatibility standpoint, or moving to Azure SQL database. I mean, you don't have to wait for managed instance if you don't need to.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, 53% of MSIT apps are migrating today, right? But the advantage with coming to the PaaS service, the Azure SQL Database service, is there's a lot of other benefits. Like, so threat detection is an example. Where we're collecting about 700 terabytes of telemetry data every day.
Every day, yep.
That we're using to create these machine learning models that detect like malicious attacks on your database. We're investing very heavily in making sure that your queries perform much faster, right? So if we see a regression in your query performance because of a change we made or a change that the application developer made, we are able to detect that with a lot of precision.
Yep.
And so there's a lot of these benefits, and of course all the benefits around manageability, right? Backup, restore, high availability, disaster recovery, all that's built in. It's very turnkey, especially with AutoDR. And we're going to keep pushing the boundaries of what we're going to do in our PaaS services. So if this is valuable, like what I normally say is if there's an application where, it's something that you believe you want to invest in the future, I would definitely consider upgrading that to a managed service, just because of the other additional benefits.
The benefits you get, right? You mentioned those. Let's drill down on the managed service, because I think given that you had 500 people in your session yesterday, and the fact you were mugged with just a ton of people going, yeah, that was awesome. We talked about migrating and not this the flexibility it gives you once you get there, because there's a question up there about sharding, right? And but we talked earlier about the elastic pools option, things like that. I use managed instance, right? I'm not done there, right? Or I could stay there, but what flexibility does that give me once I'm there? Because I could say, hey, I want to use the other, like you say, the other benefits of.
That's a great question, Scott. I think, and this is where like Azure SQL Database, from a relational database services standpoint, was designed as a platform for your modern apps, right? If you're rewriting, or you're sort of building a new SaaS app that needs those capabilities. What we're doing is we're effectively saying, look, with the whole investments in the database migration service and managed instances, look, you can migrate your databases, you can migrate your applications to Azure SQL Database without any changes. That's absolutely the bar that we need to go here, right? So it's effectively the true lift and shift with almost no application changes is going to be a reality, right? Now, after that, depending on how the developer wants to modernize their app, if they want to make it SaaSified, if you will, then they can do it in their own terms. Like they might choose to pick a certain set of databases that they move to the managed instance and say, I want to sort of migrate them to Elastic Pool so that each database can be governed independently, right? So they're able to do that. They want to move to more of their app into a more database scope programming model. They can do that and modernize their app. And the beauty is that's just an update SLO statement. You're not doing another migration of your database, right? Whereas some of our competitors basically say for lift and shift, land in one place and then do another migration to do so it sort of becomes like a two-step hassle. And we're saying like, look, you come land your relational databases in Azure SQL Database, and while you're there, your lift and shift works, and you're able to modernize your app as well in just a single step.
Yeah, it works there, but then I can look and say, given my architecture needs or given my application needs, I can look at other, right? So I got that.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, drill down. All right, you mentioned complementary. We talked about, we said SQL and NoSQL. Are these in Azure? How about on-prem, DocumentDB?
Correct.
And I think we were talking about when we talked about relational and like Cosmos and things like that, right?
Correct.
What about, I think the question is, he's asking there, do we have on-prem solutions for those?
So on-prem solutions, like right now, obviously our flagship product that we have is, SQL Server. And, we'll keep adding features from the developer experience standpoint to make that better and better. That's essentially the story that we have. And, we're obviously looking into getting more and more features of Azure into the Azure stack. And that's one way in the future that some of the additional capabilities in Azure could make it. Yes.
Okay. Let's take one more question and then we'll sort of wrap up. Is SQL Server and Azure SQL heading towards being compatible to the point where if something off the shelf works on one, it will work on the other?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So this is like, look, I just want to make it extremely clear. I can't emphasize this, and that's a great question because I know that's on the minds of a lot of existing customers who've done a ton of investment, right? Like one of the biggest learnings I'd say for me and the team personally over the last 18 months is we've built a great relational databases PaaS platform in Azure SQL Database, right? But there is and that also sort of helps with tons of customers have migrated their existing SQL Server applications already, but it's not enough, right? Purely, for the question around lift and shift, like, look, I have this instance level capabilities that I've taken a bet on, right? And those, I really don't want to invest. Again, we keep harping on this, but it's a very important point. Our goal essentially is exactly that. Like, if you have a SQL app running on SQL Server today, you should be able to lift and shift and use that in Azure SQL, move that to Azure SQL database with almost no changes. Right? I mean, it's always hard to say 0 changes because you at least have to change your connection string, right? So, I mean, but our goal really is that. And see, like, we also understand that that's not the end of the world. Like, eventually, when you're building your app for the next 15 to 30 years, you have to modernize your app. But we're going to make that be done, at the schedule and the, the flexibility that customers want and desire on their own schedule. And essentially, that's where we're going with this. So, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, the whole goal, there's a ton of work,
and by the way, it's not just SQL Server. Like I said, the database migration service that we're building.
Yeah. It's,
if you want to modernize your Oracle apps whatever, and Sybase apps and whatever you have, please go ahead. And again, and it's also one of these things. We, with the database migration service, we're going to make it easy. If you have an app on MySQL and Postgres that you want to move to our managed MySQL and Postgres instances in Azure, we're going to make that very easy as well.
Yeah. So I think the key takeaway is, look, there's a ton of work going. The database migration service is. We should seriously take a look at that, right? And it's very early on, but
and even
a ton of work going around that.
Absolutely, it's in limited preview right now, both database migration service and managed instance. I can tell you the response is overwhelming at this point. We almost like are not able to accept more customers till we build it up. But if there's interest in us, please reach out to us, and then we'll see our best how we can accommodate.
All right, so Danny, we'd like to thank you for all the questions. You're filling up our board. That's awesome. But let's wrap up. If we didn't get to your question, watch the next SQL Unplugged show. We'll save the questions. We'll probably try to get to them there. But let's wrap up with kind of the question of, we talked about managed service, database migration service. What is the, what's the future hold for, with all these great announcements, what can we look forward to without, talking NDA stuff, obviously, but, there's so, what else awesome is coming?
There is a lot of awesome stuff in the roadmap. Like, obviously, we're going to reveal it at the point in time. The thing I'd say, though, is Azure, from a data standpoint, will be the best platform in the world to bet on. I mean, I actually can, I say this with a lot of humility and confidence, if you will, just because, I think over the last 20 years, we've learned, what enterprises need, what developers need. We understand there are places where we made mistakes ourselves, right? And we sort of rectifying that, if you will. We understand that choice is very, very important for any cloud platform to succeed, and Azure will have we will meet every developer where they are. We will meet every customer where they are. Good. The choices that we have.
Lots of exciting stuff to come. Hey, everybody, thanks for watching. Be sure to follow the Twitter handle at SQL Unplugged so you know when the next shows are. Always live with Rohan. Rohan, thanks for coming. Everybody, thanks for watching. We'll see you next month.
Oh, thank you, Scott. Thanks, everyone. See ya.